By the time I'm done with this speech, as many as 20 children will have perished, succumbing to waterborne illness. It's a sobering statistic to be sure, and definitely not the type of thing one normally starts a speech off with. But the fact of the matter is, a child dies every minute of every day because they lack access to something that so many of us here take for granted. It's just a startling statistic to really realize that. But then you add into the fact that here, we turn on the faucet, water comes flowing forth, something that we see every day. But for more than 600 million people in the world, that's not their reality. More than 500 million people lack any access to an improved water source whatsoever. Another 120 million people have access to water, but that water could be just as deadly as having none at all. The end result is 840,000 adults dying every year because they lack access to water. In many parts of the world, women and children spend as many as 140 million hours every day just gathering water for their families and for their villages. That's the man-hour equivalent of building 20 Empire State Buildings every day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. In these areas, women will walk miles one way to the banks of a dangerous river, fill containers full of water, and then bear that heavy burden all the way back to their village, only to have to complete that journey again and again and again. Now, as I said before, we turn on the faucet here and water comes out. It's a mundane occurrence. But for them, it would mean so much more. It means freedom. Freedom to pursue greater endeavors. Providing access to one basic amenity could be just the very catalyst that allows people to focus on even greater things. Imagine what these women and children could do with the time if they could pump water directly from the ground in their village. Instead of having to trek miles to get this water, they could spend more time caring for younger family members or elderly family members. Better yet, they could go to school and get an education, learn skills, new ideas that'll not only improve their lives, but the lives of their families and of their villages in ways that they haven't even imagined yet, all by providing access to something that we take for granted here, water. Another basic amenity that a lot of us here take for granted is a complete luxury in many other parts of the world: electricity. When I go back to my hotel room tonight, I'll open the door, instinctively reach for the wall, and flip a switch, and presto, there'll be light. But in 15% of the world, they don't have regular access to electricity. That may not seem like a particularly large percentage, but keep in mind there's more than 7 billion people on our planet. Do that math. That means more than 1 billion people don't have access to electricity. If you wanted to count all of those people, tallying one person per second, it would take you longer than 31 years to count everybody who doesn't have electricity, something we consider a basic amenity. Many of these places that don't have access to electricity are in incredibly hot climates. Take India, for example. They have been a booming economy that's lifted a lot of people out of poverty, but they still have a tremendously large population of people for whom electricity is a luxury that they can't afford. Now know that in India, the average temperature in the country's interior ranges between 90 and 104 degrees. So it should come as no surprise then that the number one use for an electrical connection is to run a fan. It's a simple appliance. Probably every one of us here has one. In fact, it's so simple that we probably don't even use it because we have something even better: air conditioning. But imagine life on a 100-degree day when you don't even have a fan, let alone air conditioning, to try to ease that oppressive heat. Imagine how difficult it would be to focus on studying or reading to a child. It's hard to focus on the basic things, or it's hard to focus on improving your life in greater ways when even your basic needs aren't being met. The second most common use for an electrical connection is to run a refrigerator. Now, a refrigerator is more than just a modern convenience that keeps us from having to go to the market every day to procure food. Refrigeration staves off bacterial growth that can result in dangerous, if not deadly, foodborne illnesses. An electrical connection can really provide meaningful change to people who don't have that luxury. It can be the difference between comfort or heat stroke, good, healthy, nourishing food, or foodborne illnesses, or even death. Electricity could provide the light a child needs to read a book that inspires her to take her place among the next generation of innovators. And it'll change the world for us in ways we haven't even imagined yet. There's a reason the light bulb is the symbol of inspiration and brilliant ideas. Rightfully so, a lot of us look to technology for the solutions to these problems. Also, rightfully so, we tend to assume that a lot of these solutions will be complicated and expensive. We look at wind turbines as a solution to a lot of problems. Here in America, we'll see hillsides covered in hundreds of wind turbines that kill 300,000 birds every year. For a technology to be considered truly green, shouldn't it be compatible with every element of our environment? But what if the solution could be found in something simple? What if Thoreau was even more prophetic than we first thought when he said, "Simplify, simplify"? What if nature provided the solution? In fact, nature has. The term is called biomimicry, and the idea is to create something that moves with nature, in harmony with it, in concert with it, not fighting it, but moving with it like a bird does in flight. Imagine what something that is simple to build, built using scrap materials, placed in the hands of the very people who need it most. Imagine what that could do. Now, we're not talking about IKEA's idea of simple to build. You don't need an engineering degree or even manufacturing experience to put this together. This is truly simple, built using scrap materials. Imagine what that could do to change somebody's life. Those women and children that we spoke about earlier, they could focus on education instead of irrigation. Fewer parents would know the pain of losing a child before his or her time. Families could gather around the light of a lamp, watching their child read their first book, cooled by the breeze of a fan. We have a vision at Terrafin. That vision is a world where everybody has access to the most basic needs, water and electricity. And at Terrafin, we're creating products that do just that, give everybody what they need to improve the quality of life for people around the world, especially those who need it most. Thank you.